The US tests a new weapon in Australian waters, but a catastrophic accident occurs. A giant mushroom cloud appears, just like a nuclear explosion. The nearest city is destroyed in an instant. Local authorities quickly organize search and rescue teams, but little do they know, the real horror has just begun. Hello, everyone. This is your favorite zombie channel. Today, we will be looking at Australia's newest zombie film from 2026, We Bury the Dead. As the military arrives on the island for the rescue, they discover the disaster is far worse than they imagined. The victims are not just in the nearby towns. On the 65,000 square kilometer island of Tasmania, the hundreds of thousands of residents on the island may have no survivors. It turns out the unexpected explosion was not a conventional weapon, but a type of wide-area pulse weapon. The powerful electromagnetic wave from the explosion directly covered the entire island. This type of electromagnetic pulse can instantly destroy the brain of any living creature, causing neurological breakdown, leading to death. Due to the vast scale of the disaster, the authorities could only recruit rescue volunteers very quickly. Planes began landing on the island. As soon as the volunteers deplaned, they were forced to hand over their phones and other communication devices. Clearly, the military did not want the real situation on the island to be leaked. And most volunteers were friends and relatives of the island's residents. After all, this was not an ordinary disaster. Uninvolved people certainly would not risk coming here, unless they desperately needed money. As for Ava, when the disaster struck, her husband Mitch was on a business trip on the island, and she had lost contact with him. To find him, she signed up to join. However, she did not expect that her husband's workplace was through the city closest to the epicenter. That place was still engulfed in flames. So, to ensure safety, the authorities decided to start the rescue from the outer perimeter. In the end, Ava was assigned to the body collection team. But before setting out, an officer said something strange. In some very rare cases, we have observed some of the deceased exhibiting unusual behavior. It turns out, during the rescue, they found some corpses had reanimated, but not in a true sense of resurrection. Instead, they turned into zombie-like creatures. Unexpectedly, the electromagnetic wave had mutated their brains. Luckily, they move slowly and are not aggressive. If you spot one, just light a flare to report it. The soldiers on site will handle the rest. After all the instructions were given, buses took the volunteers to different towns. Under the soldiers' arrangements, they split into pairs and entered the rooms to begin the work of moving the bodies. Looking at the bodies on the floor, Ava was stunned for a moment. The surroundings were completely undamaged. Only the family of 3 lying there quietly. The faucet was still running. From this, Tone could see they had practically fallen and died instantly. Soon, the street outside was filled with neatly arranged corpses. Trucks carried them away, one load after another. The scene was horrifying. Some volunteers could not help but vomit on the spot. The heart-wrenching cries of relatives occasionally echoed through the scene. Very quickly, Ava's first partner could not take it and left on the spot, saying he could not do it. And unlike the others, Ava's second partner, Wallace, was like a soulless corpse-moving machine, facing all sorts of bodies without flinching. His eyes only showed a desire to work because he was volunteering for the money. But the two of them soon ran into trouble. A large man weighing up to 250 kilograms. They had to call for help to finish the job. They thought the zombies the army mentioned did not exist. But soon someone lit a flare in a panic. The soldiers' method of handling it was simple and brutal. Not long after, Ava's duo also discovered a zombie. It just stood there motionless, but its appearance was very frightening. Even though Ava was mentally prepared, she was still scared out of her wits. Then Wallace also lit a flare. The soldiers stationed nearby immediately came and shot it down. As for the bodies that were taken away, they were gathered and buried on the spot. But seeing this tragic scene, Ava still held on to the illusion that her husband was alive. Besides, even if he had really passed away, Ava wanted to see his body with her own eyes. So she took advantage of the evening gathering to mark the hotel where her husband was staying on a map, then packed her essentials, preparing to sneak away. Unexpectedly, soon as she got downstairs, she was spotted by a soldier. "Where are you going?" "I'm just going out for some air." The female soldier was not stupid. Who goes out for air with a backpack? Her escape plan failed. Ava could only think of another way. She went to the gathering hall and found her partner, Wallace, wanting him to help her leave. In the end, it is unclear if it was out of sympathy or if he wanted something with Ava. When Ava stated her purpose, Wallace agreed immediately. However, Tit was still a long way to her husband's location, so they had to find a way to get a vehicle. Coincidentally, the next day, while they were searching for bodies, they found a working motorcycle in a warehouse. And what surprised them even more was, the warehouse was filled with scattered corpses. From the scene, it was clear they were having a party when the disaster struck. But now that they had transportation, the two did not bother with moving the bodies. Dan decided to escape immediately. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Ava discovered another zombie, just like the one they met before. Tit also stood motionless. The difference was its appearance was not as scary. It just kept grinding its teeth, and she seemed to understand what Ava was saying. Ava was trying to communicate with it. Seeing this, Wallace called her to leave. "Ava, what are you doing? Get away from her." To avoid being discovered by soldiers, the two could only push the motorcycle out the back door. After getting out of everyone's sight and leaving the area, Wallace immediately sped off. But they had not been happy for long. When a military convoy appeared ahead, they were a different team, going around to eliminate zombies. Seeing this, the two quickly hid behind a car, unexpectedly. At that moment, Ava was horrified to discover walking zombie appeared behind them, but it was quickly shot down by the convoy. Watching the convoy drive further and further away, the two finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then they continued on their way. Soon, smoke from fires began to appear in the sky, indicating they were getting closer to the destroyed city. And as the two went deeper, the situation became more and more serious. Not only was visibility very low, but the thick smoke was also suffocating. Fortunately, they found 2 gas masks in an ambulance. But unfortunately, the zombies here seemed to be more active. Stone, with its lower half missing, was still crawling on the ground, and it even showed signs of aggression. Combined with the zombies they met before, they could not help but suspect that the closer they got to the explosion center, the more violent the zombies would become. When they reached the top of a hill, they saw the incredibly tragic scene in the city center. Raging fires filled the sky, with no sign of stopping. They did not dare to linger at all, until they ran out of gas. Dan dared to find a gas station to rest. Riding for a long time made Wallace sore all over, but when Ava came to massage him, strange noise came from behind. The two turned around to look. Tan found a zombie approaching them. Although it was missing a leg, its temper was not small, baring its fangs and claws, ready to attack them. Seeing such an aggressive zombie for the first time, the two panicked for a moment. Luckily, at the critical moment, Soldier appeared in time. Tan took down the zombie with one shot. I noticed they all have one characteristic. The longer time passes, the more violent they become. Clay was the soldier in charge of this area. Learning that the two had sneaked here, immediately locked Ava in a room, saying he would report their actions. Before receiving a response from his superiors, the two had to be detained separately. After saying that, Clay led Wallace away. At this time, Ava was full of regret. It was one thing for her to be caught, but she had also implicated the innocent Wallace. But not long after, Clay returned. Tan said that Wallace had escaped when he was not looking, but his comrades were already in pursuit. Once he is caught by them, they would face very severe punishment. Ava was half convinced by his words, but then changed his tone, saying he understood Ava's search for her husband and her willingness to risk crossing the danger zone to get here. So he was willing to personally escort Ava to her husband's hotel. Then the condition that she must promise not to escape like Wallace. I won't, I promise. Although Ava was a little worried, she had no other choice in this situation. Tan could only get into Clay's car, but they drove until nightfall and still had not arrived. How much longer? Almost there. Next, Clay said, wanted to stop by a farm to get something, which he had discovered on a previous mission. Not long after, the car turned onto a small road. Tan stopped in front of a house. Ava thought he would grab his things and leave, but he asked her to come into the house with him. Tan have dinner before leaving, but after entering the house, Ava discovered a photo of Clay and a woman on the table. It was obvious this was Clay's home. When Clay saw Ava had seen the photo, he did not hide it. This was indeed his home. The woman in the photo was his wife. His wife was about to give birth, but ended up dying in this disaster, sharing a similar fate. Ava could certainly understand Clay's feelings, but his strange behavior made Ava unable to shake her suspicions. However, things had come to this. She could only probe him. When are we leaving? Soon. But before we go, I want to ask you for a favor. The scene changes. Ava is now in the bedroom. It turns out Clay wanted Ava to wear his wife's clothes and dance with him. How perverted. But Ava could only agree. At this moment, she still held a glimmer of hope that perhaps after fulfilling this request would really take her to find her husband. But because she still had her wedding ring on, Ava did not put on that other ring. Soon, Clay entered. After Ava put on the headphones with music, the two began to sway to the music. At first, Ava was a bit resistant, but as she closed her eyes and listened to the melodious tune, an image of dancing with her husband appeared in her mind. Both imagined the other as their loved one. Lost in the moment, unable to escape. But when Clay accidentally noticed Ava was not wearing the ring, the atmosphere immediately became tense. I told you, you have to wear everything. The ring, too. The music's over. Would you mind changing it? You promised just one dance, and we have danced. Now, please take me to find my husband. After Ava's firm refusal, Clay immediately changed his attitude. He held the ring, and, in a threatening tone, forced Ava to put it on. Otherwise, she could forget about finding her husband. But this time, Ava did not back down. Back up. Ava, I said, do not come over here. Ava took the opportunity to run into the opposite room. Tan locked the door before Clay could catch up. When she turned around to look, she discovered a corpse with a large belly on the bed. It was clearly Clay's wife. As Clay broke down the door, Dee did not forget to explain to Ava that some people turn into zombies, because they have unfinished business, and his wife, who was about to give birth, was the same. Therefore, he was certain his wife would be reanimated. It seems his wife's death dealt a severe blow to Clay, to the point that his psyche became severely distorted. At this point, Iva just wanted to leave this place quickly, so she risked climbing out the window. Remembering the car key was on the table downstairs, Ava had to muster her courage to go get the key. Unexpectedly, just as she opened the door, Clay was coming down from upstairs. Ava. In a panic, Ava hid in the adjacent warehouse. Clay followed closely with a flashlight. She hid in a corner, not daring to make a sound. But when the flashlight beam hit, in front of her was a group of terrifying zombies, but their hands were all bound by iron chains. Clearly, this was the work of the Twisted Clay. A blackboard recorded all kinds of data. No wonder he knew so much about zombie behavior. It turned out to be the result of his research. Seeing her hiding spot was about to be exposed, Ava thought of a plan. She immediately took off the ring on her hand and then appeared in front of Clay. "Honey, I can't find my ring. Have you seen it?" Ava decided to feign compliance, put on the ring and dance with him one more time, then find a chance to get his car key and escape. Unexpectedly, Clay was not fooled at all. "It is too late, Ava. You ruined everything." Luckily, Ava was prepared. She used the screwdriver hidden behind her back to stab him through the neck. Hurriedly taking his car key, Ava did not hesitate, preparing to drive away. Unexpectedly, just as she started the car, Clay's wife appeared in front of her as a zombie. Unexpectedly, it was just as he predicted. His wife had really turned into a zombie, and she looked very gentle, with no aggression. This scene made Ava think of her husband. Would he also die and turn into a zombie like this? Thinking of this, Ava immediately set off, continuing towards her destination. But as she got closer to her husband, a car crash blocked her way. With no other choice, she had to get out, grab an axe, and walk. She walked until the sun was about to set. At this point, Ava was physically and mentally exhausted, but she did not know that danger was approaching, and extremely violent zombies suddenly appeared behind her. It was not until it roared and charged that Ava noticed. In her panic, Ava crawled into an overturned bus, but the zombie followed closely behind. At the nick of time, she found a fire extinguisher in the bus. After the danger passed, Ava dragged her weary body back on the road, but the sun was about to set again. Fortunately, before it got dark, she found a camper van. After clearing the body inside, she decided to spend the night in the van. Looking at the map, there were only 6 kilometers left. If nothing unexpected happened, she would arrive tomorrow. However, just as she fell asleep, a corpse outside reanimated. Ava was awakened by the noise, but she did not choose to stay in the van. Instead, she grabbed her axe and went to investigate, planning to find it and eliminate the threat. As a result, when she got in front of the van, she was surprised to find the zombie digging a hole with a shovel. After noticing Ava's presence, it did not react at all, just turned around and continued its work. Looking back at the bodies on the ground, Ava finally understood the zombie was preparing to bury its family. Unexpectedly, this zombie had human consciousness. It seems not all zombies become violent. If it is true, because Clay said that corpses reanimate because of unfinished business, then burying his family might be his obsession. Thinking of this, Ava immediately let her guard down and helped it push the body into the hole. And after fulfilling its wish, the zombie no longer wanted to live on as a zombie. It knelt down in the hole and gestured to Ava. Understanding its intention, Ava decided to see the good deed through, so she decisively raised the shovel to send it to be with its family. After finishing, Ava did not return to the van, but walked through the night to her husband's hotel. Finally, that sunrise, she arrived, but what greeted her were corpses doing yoga. The dead here also turned into zombies, but they did not seem friendly. Even through the glass, they wanted to eat Ava. With an anxious heart, Ava began to search for her husband, room by room. As she opened the second room's door, she immediately saw a corpse leaning against the bed. Getting closer, she saw it was her husband. Ava had anticipated this result, so she appeared relatively calm. "Hi, darling." She just did not expect. Her husband's body had already started to decompose, but showed no signs of turning into a zombie. Accidentally looking up, Ava noticed 2 glasses of red wine on the nightstand. One of them had a lipstick stain. She immediately thought of something and began to search the room. Soon, she found a woman's employee ID on the table, and then saw a female corpse in the bathroom. On the sink was the wedding ring her husband had taken off. To think she had risked everything, traveling 1,000 miles to get here, only to be met with her husband's betrayal. At this moment, Ava felt like a fool. The important thing was her husband had not turned into a zombie, which showed there was nothing left in this world for him to cling to, including, of course, Ava. However, even though the truth was clear, Ava still hoped her husband could be revived. "Mitch, please, wake up." But no matter how she called, showed no reaction at all. Instead, familiar voice came from outside. Surprisingly, the escaped Wallace had also found his way here. It seems Clay was not lying back then. And this Wallace guy was quite conscientious, to come and find Ava. Later, the two went to the seaside. Ava told Wallace what was on her mind. It turns out her husband's affair was not accidental. Their relationship had long been strained because Ava could not have children. The two often argued about it, tone time even getting physical. To get back at her husband, Ava, in a moment of impulse, cheated on him, but later felt guilty about it. So, before he left for his business trip, she told him everything. It was not until the disaster broke out on the island that Ava risked everything to find him, hoping to make up for her mistake in some way. It is a pity that chance will never come. After confiding in Wallace, Ava felt much more relieved. She decided to completely let go of the past and left her wedding ring in the room with Wallace's help. The two took her husband's body out of the hotel, placed it on a small boat. Tan set it on fire for a sea burial. After finishing everything, they found a car to head back. But on the way, Zombie stood in the middle of the road, looking closely. It turned out to be Clay's wife, but her dress was covered in blood. And her belly was no longer big. It seemed she had given birth. At that moment, Ava faintly heard a baby's cry. Tan the zombie, if it had fulfilled its wish, turned and walked away. The two followed the sound of crying through a forest. Tan found a newborn baby in a ruined building. The boy looked like a healthy child. Tan had not inherited any mutations from his mother. The movie ends here. Although this is a zombie movie, there are very few zombie scenes. They only appear a few times. There are not even any scenes of zombies biting people, so it is unknown if a bite is infectious. But the creepy feeling of the zombies is well portrayed. After all, the special effects team is from The Walking Dead. As for the ending with a zombie giving birth, it is not a novel idea. It symbolizes rebirth and hope. Many zombie films have similar plots. And, as a theatrical release, Dit's box office performance was not ideal. It did not even break even. But the director refuses to give up. Tan has confirmed a sequel is in the works. He already has a preliminary idea for the sequel, set in a more exciting DC region. Hopefully, the second part will have more zombie scenes. Alright, that is all for this video. Thank you all for watching. We will see you next time.